Scrum is an agile framework, flexible and adaptive, aimed to deliver value as quick as possible to your business. And you probably have heard of terms like sprints, a Scrum Master, a product owner and a stand-up meeting. Actually, this is also a little bit of my background, and I think we're going back to 2008 when I was working at a customer site and the business requirements were not clear yet. But the delivery date was set in stone. And that was done by the government, so we could actually not break the delivery date. So we needed to deliver, but we did not have the business requirements. So we thought, let's do things differently. And we came out to do Scrum in the SAP world, to collaborate intensely with the business. It was quite a new thing in the SAP world around that day, and a lot of people said, this will not work with SAP. You cannot do Scrum and SAP. But luckily, we proved them wrong, and we delivered successfully and on time. Scrum and Agile entered the SAP world around then and onwards, and organizations transformed into Agile organizations. The framework became scalable and still making sure, of course, to deliver to the business as fast as possible with the right quality. And to deliver on time with predictable results with high quality, that is also the ambition of the guest of today, Peter Turien. He is a transformation coach, and with his colleagues they coach and train people and transform organizations to be agile, scalable, with SAFe. I'd like to learn more, and I hope you too. Welcome to HANA Café, the Netherlands.
HANA Café Nederland is your one-stop shop for all things SAP. Grab yourself a coffee or tea and join regulars Jan Penninkhof,
Goedemiddag,
and Twan van der Broek,
That's me.
with our guests as they chat about latest developments, innovations, events, or simply catch up. Let's head inside.
Welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
Maybe, because I know, as I already mentioned, a lot of those terms that like product owner and Scrum Master and the stand-up meeting. But that's also where my knowledge stops, because after being a Scrum coach and a Scrum Master for a long time, I stepped back into the content of the business technology from SAP.
Mm-hmm.
And so I skipped the part of making this scalable. So what is SAFe, Peter? Maybe you can explain it to us.
Sure. SAFe is just one way of working agile. And when you think about the good old days that you mentioned in, what was it, 2008?
Yeah.
That was also around the time that I started working agile. And when working agile is a mindset. So, like you said, you want to deliver early and often. And one of the ways that we do that was with a team, and this team would deliver as much value as possible in a cadence of a certain quality. And what we discovered at some point is that the questions that we have, the business questions, are just too large to do with one team. So we start to become creative and make sure that different teams work together. And we had several different ways to do that. And at some point, there was this guy in the US, Dean Levingwell, and he created a model. There are more models, of course. We also have less, and we have a model from IBM, but SAFe is clearly the winner. Not because it's the best model, but because they have the most beautiful marketing pictures. And basically, what we do with SAFe is make sure that we have a central backlog that different teams work together on, so that we can give answers to large questions in an organization. And SAFe is a 3-tiered model. So we have the strategic layer to give us direction, we have the tactical layer that organizes stuff, and we have the operational layer where we produce and realize our product. Yeah. So it's central focus for larger groups to work on.
Yeah, what you mentioned, you have multiple teams, so they are still independent, working like themselves. They are self-supporting teams, or how is this collaboration between the teams then managed?
So you have two dynamics. One is the team dynamic, and the team dynamic is very much as we learned it. So we have our sprints. Usually, it's in a Scrum environment. So we have our sprints in 2 weeks, and we have all the rituals that come with that. But we also have tiny layer above that. So planning, every so often we have an increment planning or an interval planning, I should say, from SAFe 6 now, where, and usually that's around a quarter, where all the teams come together and they plan together. So we have the larger questions and we plan together on the larger questions. But the teams take the work with them, and then they start to work individual again within the teams. But we still collaborate as well. So you have some actual rituals like a scrum of scrums or an art sync, and beautiful rituals like that.
Yeah, but so the scrum of scrums I know, because when I have, for example, in an SAP implementation, you have multiple teams working side by side. Then you have the scrum of scrum where the scrum masters come together and share the progress and also where they can have some support. Sure. But you just mentioned this quarterly meetings. Is that also like the PI days?
Yeah, those are the PI days.
Those are the PI days.
So so what you have in a team is you have the plan, do, check, act cycle. You have the Deming cycle every 2 weeks. And when you look at an agile release train, so the team of teams is called an agile release train. And they also have the Deming cycle, the plan, do, check, act. And they start with the PI planning, and then they have the art syncs. And then at the end, you'll have the demo and the inspect and adapt to make sure that you do continuous improvement, because that's one of the key factors in working agile. Yeah. So you have that in the larger dynamic as well. So you have the, if you take the 3 layers that I just mentioned, every 2 weeks you have a plan to check act cycle on the operational layer. Every quarter you have a plan to check act cycle on the technical layer. And every year and a half, 2 years, you have the same cycle on the strategic level. And that's good, because I want to work for a stable company. So the plan to check act cycle there goes slow. But I want to know how my money is spent, and I want to react on that very quickly. And that's where the operation is. Yeah. And we have a short cycle there. So things are still in good order there.
Yeah. So the roles within Scrum, I think, are known. What kind of new roles do you have if you have those 3 layers that you just mentioned?
Yes. If you, basically, we're all still Scrum Masters and product owners. That's the first thing I would like to mention there. But on the train level, you'll have an RTE. So you have a chief Scrum Master or a Scrum of Scrum Masters. You have a product manager. So the POs, they work together, and there's a product manager there as chief product owner. And in the teams, it's too small to really have architecture there. You do have your lead developers there. But on the train level, if you have 50 to 80 people together, it starts to pay off to have real attention on architecture there as well. So the triangle there is you have an RTE who is there for the delivery. You have a product manager who's there to make sure that the requirements are managed, and then you have an architect who makes sure that we work within the correct boundaries and who basically sets the rules where we play with.
Is that more like a solution architect, more on the technical side, or more like an enterprise architect?
We call them solution architects, but the term solution architect has a lot of different meaning in different companies.
Yeah, the word architect already has a different meaning. Yeah.
But they're definitely not enterprise architects. You still have an enterprise architect, and but it's also that they're not necessarily solution architects in the sense of they know everything about the solution. For instance, SAP. They also have a lot of focus on clean software development, and they have a lot of focus on how things will fit in the bigger picture in the business processes. So it's not a solution architect in the traditional sense, I would say.
Okay. And looking then, because you probably try to realize something that the business needs, so you have business requirements, and you already mentioned the product backlog. I'm not used to work in in a skilled environment, so I'd like to understand. So the business has requirements, and if you have multiple teams working on that, how are you going to divide the business requirements over the different product backlogs?
Yes, well, that's actually an easy trick. So on a strategic level, we have our high-level requirements, and we call them epics in SAFe. But they're still high-level requirements, and they have different stages. And at some point, you have one of those epics, and you decide as an organization, well, we really should get to the point that we start to develop on that. And that's where the product manager starts to negotiate with the business how we should slice this large requirement, and they slice it into features. So, and features are not detailed requirements, not high-level requirements either, but those are the requirements that you would like, if you ask a team to deliver on that, you want them to deliver within one program interval. And so in a quarter. That's the rule. So what you do during the PI planning is, as a product manager, you articulate what the requirements from the business are, and you articulate that in features. So what we say is you give them 10 features. Why 10? Well, if you have 100 features, it's too small, so probably you have user stories or smaller requirements. If you only have 2, you probably have epics, and it's still too large. So around 10 for 5 to 8 teams. That's about what you should have. If you have 8, don't worry. If you have 12, it's good too. Yeah. It's around 10.
Yeah.
And
you're not being fundamentalistic about that.
Oh no, not at all. And then when you have articulated what the features are, then teams can actually see what they see fit for their teams to start to develop on. And what they do is they adopt a feature, and they start to slice it even a little more. So they make it more operational, and they go to those famous user stories. And that's where they end with the planning there. So they have a planning with the user stories there, and they set their goals, what they would like to achieve during the next interval that we have. If they feel that the features is not finished yet, but they cannot get all the requirements there in user stories, they just give it back to the product manager, and other teams could schedule on that same feature on things that they think they are still needed. But usually it's one team that adopts it. And then when the planning is finalized, so we have a lot of discussions, and probably it takes a little too much time to go into that. But let's say it's finalized, and we know that everybody what their planning is, and this team has, let's say, 2 features that they have sliced into user stories and have in their own planning. Then they go into their own dynamic with every 2 weeks in their plan to check act cycle. So basically, they start to they start to refine on the first iteration that they have. So they just take the first iteration with the user stories that they have, and they start to discuss on that and do what we always did. The product owner tells about the user story, and we ask questions, and we plan, and we make it into tasks, and we keep track on that in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. So you have sprints of 2 weeks,
Sure.
and then a certain amount of time to deliver then this part of the backlog.
Yeah. So all so we have a planning that we all agree on, so we know what we want to deliver, what the goals are that we would like to achieve, and we get the same dynamic that we always had. So the teams start to deliver every 2 weeks with their products. All the products that we realize we integrate it, because if you integrate all the way in the end, it's too much. So you keep integrating on that. Every 2 weeks, the product owner does acceptance on what the team has delivered. So we can also measure what kind of value we already bring to the organization. And at the end of the interval, we have our demo of the entire construct, and we show the organization again what we have delivered. So first, I would say we peel it off. So on strategic level, we have the epics, and then the features, and then the user stories. And then from the tasks on, the teams start to deliver, and then we start to build it up. So we build it up on teams and deliver to the product owners. Then we build it up and deliver it to product management, and they accept on behalf of the organization. And at some point, you can raise the flags on strategic level because you actually change something on strategic level.
And your teams are still multidisciplinary. You have all the tastes that you need to deliver the functionality.
Well, that's a little different with traditional the one teams, because if you have one team, you must have a team that could do everything.
Yeah.
If you have a train and you have different teams, what you see there is that you have feature teams, and those teams still do everything. But you also have teams, especially if it's a large product that you would like to deliver. You also want to have teams that want to deliver very specific and high speed. So it could be that you have 2 teams with just SAP development, and they make high speed. But that's also, it tells a little bit about the maturity of the train. So when the train is young, so to say, and let's say you have 5 teams, you probably have 3 teams that are really with those SAP developers. While if the team is a bit more mature and the train is a bit more mature, what you'll see is that you'll get some more feature teams there, because the question starts to differ.
If you look at the team that from the project that I was just referring to, I had an SAP developer, I had integration specialist, but I also had the business modeler and the business architect in that same team to work collaboratively on the backlog and make sure that we delivered the right functionality. And also the tester was also in the team.
Yes.
How is testing in the safe?
It's still the same. So testing is still within the team. And what is also still the same with if it's just one team, or if it's a team of teams, that you have a train, or even more complicated that you have more trains, train of trains, you have a solution train, for instance. Still, you want to have testing in the team, and you want to have emphasis very heavily on automation. You have testing and automation within the teams close to where it happens.
Okay. You have a very solid background in project management and leading teams and also transforming organizations. Not only in the SAP world. Now you know me for a while now, and I'm an SAP guy. Not only because I'm employed by SAP, but also I'm doing SAP projects all my working life. Is there a difference in applying SAFe or Agile to SAP teams, SAP organizations in your experience?
No, not really. Maybe in the beginning, and in the beginning it was more because SAP, of course, had their own implementation framework. They had ASAP. It was there, and they invested heavily in it, and they were working on that. And because and this was a little bit of a paradox, because the implementations of SAP were so massive and so complicated, is that you can only do it with ASAP.
Waterfall.
Yes, it's waterfall. And my thesis, and yours as well, was no, it's massive and it's so complicated, so just slice and dice it and claim your success every 2 weeks in our case there. And actually the first time that I went out to work in an agile way was for a bank, and it was in an SAP environment, because I also did SAP implementations. I was known for that at that time. And what we did was, in an HR environment, we created a self-service portal and straight-through processing. And it was excellent for Agile and Scrum work, because you could do it per process and even sometimes per part of a process and bring it live in the portal. And so the only thing that was different, that there was a lot of skepticism at that point that it could be done in an Agile way of working, but the way of working itself and how we dealt with it was the same. And another difference was, but I don't think that's because of SAP, but because the way of working was unknown. What we did at that time was new and magic, and needed a lot of explanation. While these days, if you say, "Well, we work in an Agile and Scrum environment," everybody's, "Oh yeah, all right."
Yeah. But so your example dates from what year?
This particular date was in 2009, I would say.
Yeah, so that's really in the early days, and you just mentioned in the briefing a little bit, but you can be honest about that. So how did SAP respond to you when you suggested let's do it in an agile way?
They said that they could not guarantee the right outcome of the project. Yes,
that's almost 20 years ago,
Yes.
a little bit less, but that was set around those days. It was really Scrum in the SAP world was really doing something totally different, and people did not believe that waterfall could be replaced by something better.
Yes, and imagine my surprise that about 2 or 3 years later, my dear coworker from CMG, Koen van Sabbe, who joined SAP, wrote on his LinkedIn, "I'm an agile coach now." So within SAP.
That's. I work together with Koen these days, so that's nice. Okay. And so you just mentioned ASAP as a methodology, which is now called SAP Activate, and Koen is still working on the methodology and the training of people in that a lot. That's funny how the history then changes, but also due to the insight that things have to be done differently, because in the old days you did an implementation, and after 3 years you come back to the customer, now we're done, here is the result, and then the customer said, it's not really what we expected that it would be.
It is what we asked for, but it's obsolete.
Yeah, exactly. So that the collaboration between business needed to be and IT needed to be facilitated in a better way, and I think those agile frameworks really facilitate in that. That's a good thing. So no real difference between the SAP world, and at least nowadays, and the non-SAP world. But coming from doing, as I did, one project for this customer I earlier mentioned with a multidisciplinary team, or maybe an SAP implementation with more teams, but focusing on HR, on logistics, on purchasing, so that then you had teams separated by functionality.
Mm-hmm.
Coming then to the transition of an organization, that's a different piece of cake. That's more your piece of cake and not mine. But can you elaborate a little bit on that? How do you transform an organization to be agile? If they are used to work for 100 years is of course a bold statement, but if they are used to work in a specific way, like in the waterfall, how do you then transform into agile? Because that's really different.
Yes. Well, to describe the first experience that I had, so this customer said, "Peter, we will work lean and agile," and I said, "Well, I've heard about it and I think it's great." And then they said, no, you will work lean and agile. It's your project that we will pilot with, this famous SAP project. And I said, okay. So I actually went to training with my customer there, and it was great, and I really enjoyed it for the same reasons that you just mentioned. You could work with your customer, but the actual customer that had asked you a question, you could answer them instead of you deliver 5 years later and everybody has moved on. Yeah. So I got it, and that weekend I said, well, this is where I want to sit. These are the teams that I want to have. And this is how I think about the backlog. I see some people who could be Scrum Master, and I went back and said, well, this is how we would like to work. And the first thing they said to me, and those were the people who actually invested in the training with me. Well, this is something we can't do. You just want to go ahead, and we need a statement of work, and we need a PSA and a PIT and a PRA, and all those documents came
the old days
for us. And that's when it dawned to me that if you want to change, the organization still needs to recognize you. And so my first strategy was not so much at this customer, because there we were in the large experiment, but with the next customer, claim a domain that basically is a fence around. And a domain that is a fence around is a program. And a program is not ideal because you, of course, you want to have the value chain that you would want to support. But with a program, you get clipped pretty close.
Yeah.
And then you got this magic environment where the leadership teams would say, well, we think it can work, and they knew that if it didn't work, it was within this closed container, and they could say, yeah, well, this it was just an experiment. So we did it on a program level, and that really worked for so long, because at some point you say, well, if we want to continue with our agile transformation, then dear leadership team, you need to transform too. And then they were so used by that the entire organization had already changed, but they didn't have to. So that was the next bridge that we had to go to. But the trick was to get a confined part of the organization where you could do this and where you can transform with 50 to 125 people. And usually with a program, that's what you have right there. And my experience is, and I think your experience as well, is if you sit down with development teams and say, well, we want to work Scrum. The only question is that they have is, how does it work? And then you tell them how it works, and they say, well, okay, we'll try it, and you'll just go ahead. Yeah. That's never a problem. So to transform in a program, it's actually quite easy. What is harder is that at some point you need new requirements, and you don't want those requirements as we do it in a program. Either you have the 20 million for the change or you don't. You just want to have a flow with epics, and that's where it starts to become more challenging.
Yeah, and so you said it's a contained environment, so there you could prove them this is going to work. Mm-hmm. Is it then also the base then to also grow it within the organization? So if this program is going to work like this, the other programs will also work like that?
Not necessarily. And that this is a fun parallel with SAP projects and SAFe implementations or scaled agile implementations, I try to say. When in the old days, when organizations start to invest in ERP software, people would come around and they had this large tender and they said, well, SAP will be it. And they knew what they bought. And then we had the constant fight where organizations said, well, we are special. So
we are different.
We are different. And we bought this standard software, but you need to program for us. Yeah. And that really led to implementations that were somewhat right. But I would like to, I dare to say that most organizations over the years had a second implementation. So they had a new ERP implementation where they said, well, we don't want to have all the customized software anymore. This is what we bought, and we start to change the organization. Yeah. And that's the same with the agile transformations, at least the larger transformations, because we did the transformations, and at some point it got stuck. And that's because we had all those pockets where we did agile or form for scaled agile, but the organizations weren't agile. And so at some point you see that organizations, some organizations went back to waterfall, and some organizations were in heavily in debate. And that's where you see that the second implementation comes around, and they know that it cannot be carried by the programs. It needs to be carried by the leadership team. So we are actually in the second round of implementation at this point. Yeah. And you see that with a lot of organizations. You see it in the energy world where they did, and they've made that transformation a long time ago. And they got stuck at some point, and they regrouped and reorganized. But with my current assignment as well, about 6 or 7 years, they did it in different pockets in the organization. And I said, no, if we want to do it right, we need to transform as an organization.
Yeah. You need to tear down all the walls and all the boundaries that there were from the past, and have to find and reorganize the whole organization.
Yes.
What is crucial in your opinion to make this happen?
Two things. One is you need to have real sponsorship. And real sponsorship is not, oh yeah, go ahead and do it, and if it goes right, I'll tell people about it, and if it doesn't work that well, don't bother me. So you really need to have someone who goes on stage and says, this is important, it's important for us, it's important for our organization, but it's also important for me. I personally think this is what we should do. I had one organization where I had a bit of a fight if we should do it this way, because they thought that, they believed in this agile way of working and the Scrum teams, but Scrum teams working together. And at some point, one of the directors said, okay, hang on, just let me. And he went on stage, and that was an incredible moment. He said, this is what we have chosen for. I personally believe in it. I think it's important to move forward. And if you have any question, come to me. And I never had a discussion for weeks. We just could move forward. So sponsorship is very important there. And the other thing is just do it. Do the experiment and see what works and see what not works. Yeah. You can sit at the drawing board and think, well, we will define the best agile transformation ever. And then you present it, and you present disappointment, basically. Yeah. So just do it. Make sure that everybody gets acquainted with the new way of working, and make room to learn, and also make room to make mistakes.
Yeah, and also be pragmatic and not, I think, not be fundamentalistic. Because that was also an old statement. If you that in the old days you all say, this is a team that is a Scrum in name only, but then it was a sort of waterfall. But then they called it the product owner and they called it the Scrum Master. That's not a good thing, of course, but you have to keep back to the core standards of being agile, and what you just explained in your example, when your executives are the real sponsor, but also acting sponsor, like being on stage and saying, hey, I believe in this, and come to me if you have questions. That is really helpful.
Yes.
And maybe a question, and I do not mean it negatively, but I'd like to also learn. When I was at a supporting organization on the B2B side, on the content side, they said, okay, we are now agile. We have several teams. We are an agile organization, and said, okay, so you are working now with B2B for a while now, but we need to think about governance. We need to think about standards, and I can see that you're using the platform to develop your own extensions, your integrations, but you're doing it differently in different teams. How can you make sure that you have the same standards, or even where do you go to improve all developments that are now not conform the right standards? And a very pragmatic example is that they have 3 different integration solutions on 3 different platforms, all being from SAP. And I said, hey, this is going to cost you money because you now pay 3 times for the same solution. And they all agreed on that, but they didn't know how to get those improvement or rebuilding or those integrations into on a backlog, because the business did not require for that. How do you have any tips on that, or recommendations?
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, the triangle that you have with product management, the RT and the architect. Well, let's not call them the RT and the product management. Let's say requirements, delivery, and architecture. Requirements will always be pragmatic on what they want. This is what we want. This is what we want. This is what we want. Yeah. And delivery will always be pragmatic on, okay, so this is what we'll produce for you. This is what we produce. And then you have the architecture part, and that's their substantial component there. It's not only that they need to tell the delivery guys, well, these are the ground rules for you, how to work. They also need to coach product management on, if you want this, we need to discuss the conditions under which you can have your new things. And if you have that discussion, if it's on a team level or a technical level or a strategic level, much rather on a strategic level in this case, then what you will do is actually prioritize your architecture roadmap in there, and you start to balance between features and epics and enablers, what we call them. So let's say for a bank, for instance, if you say, well, we want to be known for the world, it's 1999 now. We want to be known for the world, and we build a website, and that's okay. No architecture needed, whatever. At that point, someone says, well, there's a business case here. If we get our customers to do business in this website environment, we can actually close a lot of desks in the country. We can close offices. So now we start to do business on the same website. Then we need to think about uptime, security, what kind of business processes are actually suited for online banking. Well, over the years we have learned almost all of them. And a lot of those questions are architectural questions. So when you start to prioritize, you can say, okay, if you want to do a little more, then this is what you do about security. This is what you have to do about uptime. And then you can do some fun stuff again by bringing new additional requirements in. And that's really, and that's the part where architecture comes in. So architecture, the emphasis should be on delivery too, but it should really be with product management and working with product management on the requirements roadmap. And the requirements roadmap is, one part is the things that you want to have as an organization, and the other part is the things that you need to do to have a healthy environment.
So it's not only about delivering the results as fast as possible, but it's also about delivering the results in the right quality, which is under architecture.
Yes, and not only the right quality, but also is it sustainable? And like you say, those three environments, at some points it's not sustainable anymore. So there needs to be a strategy where, for instance, you say, on two environments we only do maintenance, but if you want to do something new, it's always on environment C. But A is faster, yes, but you still do it on C, because at some point we want to get rid of A because A
it's
has
new
a lot
architecture.
of yes.
But how do you then plan for refactoring? Who needs to bring in we need at some point in time we need to dismantle A and bring it to C?
Again, that is an architectural decision as far as I'm concerned. Because if you let it to product management, they don't look at that. No. They only want to have the new features. And if you leave it to delivery, they don't look at that too, because they feel the pressure from the new features, and they start to deliver. And this is not an agile or another way of working problem. This is a universal problem where I did a lot of projects where we did not meet the business case, not because the project failed, but because there was always this tiny thing that made us maintain the old environment. And it really is. It's first of all, it's a business architectural issue, but not. And I don't want to say it's only the architects, but it's really the combination between architect and product management in this case.
But they have to understand each other. They have to listen to each other, because at some point in time it will block your progress. If you keep those important integration in an old environment, you have to also progress, modernize your environment.
Yes, and we always say we as agile coaches and agile transformation coaches, we made a mistake in the past, because we said features deliver value and enablers do not deliver value, and that's not true. Enablers don't deliver value at that point in time, but they literally enable you to deliver value in the future. So they do deliver value, but it's not that if you bring it live, then the value is there. And that makes a lot of business managers cranky. And I did a lot of legislative projects as well, and that's almost an entire enabling project. You spend a lot of money, and in the end, you have what you had, and that's how it feels. Yeah. But in this case, there's a silver lining because, for instance, let's say in your environment with the 3 environments, and we say we want to make A and B obsolete, and we want to work in C. So we have to do a little more work in C now, and maybe we have to do some adjustments, and you don't see any real value there. But in the end, you get rid of A and B, which is a financial burden for the organization. You relieve the organization of that burden. Not that day, but let's say 2 years down the road.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's of course, business wants to talk about features and requirements, but it's really this puzzle of bringing that together, like business, like architecture, and like also the solution, like the technology. That you have to bring that together. You have to listen to each other, and then collaborate on doing the best for the organization now and also in the future.
Yes, and that's why, if you look at requirements management, when we think about requirements management, we really think about the things that we would like to have for the organization. That's how we look at requirements management. Yeah. But requirements management, really, it's the 2 components. It's the things that you would like to have and the things that you need to do to actually have those nice things.
Yeah, the enablers. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Maybe what is, based on your experience of the past years, what is
passed way too long? Yes.
So yeah, what is your stairway to heaven? What is your top tip for organizations that want to transform into an agile organization and make sure that to deliver to the business what they really want?
First thing, what is it that you would like to have? Not only what is it what you would like to have in form of products that you want to deliver to the world, but also what kind of organization do you want to be? Then see if you have the skills, and then see what the possibilities are, and start to work with the possibilities, and make sure that you add on those skills that you actually get the organization that you want. No organization is ready at the point that they decide that they want to transform. But all organizations are blessed with a lot of intelligent people and people who come to work to give their best every day. And that's important. Cherish that. Make sure that the people that you start with, that they're well trained, so that they're not only able to do their own jobs, but that they're also able to, infect the other people in the organization with the way of working that you would like to achieve.
Are they on the same page?
Sure.
Yeah.
Make sure, and it's not different than in any other change. So make sure that you have someone who sponsors it. Make sure that you have a small nucleus of people that actually want to go for it, and make sure that they are well equipped with training, with money, with a good question to answer, and then things start to roll. And if things start to roll and it's fun, and they see that they deliver in an almost organic way, that was the power of the small agile teams, because in those large organizations that were so stuck in their ways, I worked for organizations where they could actually realize beautiful products, but it was so hard to actually get them into production. And then you saw those small teams, and they delivered, and because every time they delivered something that was so small, they always wiggled their way through the release moments and made the movement. And that's why large organizations said, well, this is what we should do. Those little pockets that we have here, this is what we should do as an organization. So it's that movement of people that are energetic and are well trained and answer a question that is important for the organization.
Yeah, and my experience is also that all the team members of a Scrum team, in my experience, they bring in their knowledge, they bring in their experience on maybe on technology, maybe on architecture, and also the business brings in their experience. But if you bring that together, it's back being a people project instead of just technology or just translating requirements into technology. Because if you collaborate together, then you also achieve the results together, and that brings way more fun into doing projects or programs.
Yes, and make sure, especially nowadays, because most organizations already work in an agile way, and make sure that it is what you would like to achieve, and be very aware where you are now. Be sure what you want to achieve, and actually make it smart, make it measurable on your progress as an organization, the products that you deliver. So make sure that in your transformation that you start to become more data driven, because then you also know, well, we did this experiment, but we see that it doesn't work, so we should not do another experiment in the same line. Let's do something else.
Yeah, if you do things the same way, you will always get what you always got. But if you want to change something, you have to do things differently. Yeah. Thank you, Peter, for joining today in the podcast and sharing all your experiences and tips on getting more agile. And thank you very much. Thank you also for listening to today's podcast or watching the podcast on YouTube. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. And there is, of course, maybe I forgot to mention in the beginning, there is one empty chair. There's Jan. He is still on holiday, but he will probably be here next time. Thanks again, Peter. Thank you. Thanks
You're
again.
welcome.
And see you next time.
And that's a wrap for this episode of HANA Café Nederland. Jan and Tom loved having you here. Drop us a line if you have any thoughts or want to be on the show. We'll be back soon with more SAP goodness. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time. And that's a wrap.
Ja. Oké. Dat is maakt niet uit. Het staat erop. Dankjewel.